Let's talk about what's happening in Kansas City. Kansas City, Missouri police dismissed claims that black women were being targeted by a serial killer. Yet on Friday, Timothy Haslett, a 39-year-old white man, was arrested on suspicion of kidnapping and raping a 22-year-old black woman. The woman escaped his home while he dropped his child off at school. Now, she told police she'd been held captive since September, and he repeatedly raped and beat her. She said that her friends did not make it out, meaning Haslett killed him. Now, last month, a couple of folks, community leaders there, sounded the alarm that multiple black women and girls had been missing. The Kansas City Defender reported this as well. Reported missing women from Prospect Avenue. Now, the Defender discovered Haslett to be a white supremacist, found his Facebook post talking about race wars as well as Breonna Taylor. Ryan Sorrell is the founding editor of the Kansas City Defender. And Ryan, glad to have you back to give us an update. And so the woman said that her friends did not make it out. What are police saying in terms of the investigation in his home? Have they discovered remains of others? Are they saying anything at all?
They're keeping the investigation quiet at this point in time. And I also just want to preface the conversation with the fact, I know last time I was on the show, I was calling for a reimagining. I think it's important that we as news outlets truly reimagine how we practice journalism. And I think that a lot of that is actually what contributed to how long this young black woman was kept captive, how long she was tortured, how long she was abused in this man's basement, was because we sounded the alarm. I think, as you mentioned, we sounded the alarm on this specific issue. We said a little over a month ago that community leaders were making these reports that black women were going missing, potentially being killed, and the Kansas City Police Department unequivocally, without reaching out to us, without reaching out to any community leaders and asking where these reports were coming from, they unequivocally said that these reports were completely unfounded. They did not take any time to investigate. They didn't take any time to look into why people were making these reports, and they said that they were completely unfounded and had zero evidence to back up these claims. And of course, come to find out a month later, and this young woman actually told the neighbors, because there are some interviews online that include testimonies from the neighbors who actually rescued her, and the neighbors said that she thought that she had been in that basement for 2 years. That's the type of psychological trauma that she has endured after only a month of being in that truly horrific situation. And so right now, the police department, the investigators aren't releasing any information because it's a very ongoing investigation. There are multiple agencies involved. But I think that the police department itself has taken a very large credibility hit. And the larger conversation here is that black women are not being listened to, that the community is not being listened to, and that people prefer to listen to police departments and white news outlets, because our news outlet and the community at large, the black community at large, took a lot of flack for reporting these claims that, as we can see, had a lot of credibility to them in hindsight.
We have every day in our show, we have a segment called Black and Missing. And so you said, folks, here there are a number of people who are missing. Have they posted those photos? Have they posted their names and information in terms of actually showing that?
Well, I think that's the actual difficult part, because, for instance, the woman who escaped, she was not actually reported to the missing persons unit in the police department. But the issue is that a lot of these women who are preyed upon don't have people who can advocate for them. Go ahead.
Right. I don't mean coming from the police. What I'm saying, any family members, anyone else reporting these folks to be missing. Because when I think back, I think back to the people we actually mention every day. I don't think we actually had one person who was from Kansas City. And so I'm saying, as any black media outlets actually solicit information from the public saying, if you have a loved one who's missing, send us their information so we can actually put that information out.
Definitely. They're both. Myself and there's another news outlet in the area here called Kansas City Discover, and they're a black news outlet, and they very frequently solicit this information from the public. But I think that the larger issue here is that the women who are being preyed upon don't have people who can advocate for them, who are sending this information to media outlets, they're not sending the information to the police department to file missing persons unit reports. And so oftentimes in the case, this example is a very clear example of the woman who was held in the basement for over a month. No one, reported her as missing, and clearly she was missing. And she said that 2 of her friends were murdered, and we're still trying to gather as much information as we can on who those women were, or if there are additional people missing. We don't know at this point in time, but we are just trying to gather as much information as we can.
The 22-year-old woman, has she only talked to police investigators? Has she talked to anyone else as relates to what took place with her? Is she being treated somewhere? What is her status?
Well, yeah, right now she is definitely just recovering. That's really the only information that we have. But what we do know is that when she escaped, because she was able to escape whenever Timothy Haslett went to drop his son off at school, and she was able to escape. She had to get past a dog to escape, and she was able to run to a neighbor's house. And so there are actually interviews with the neighbors from the Excelsior Citizen, and the Excelsior Citizen is actually who reached out to us to draw the connection in this case. And the Excelsior Citizen has interviews on YouTube right now with the neighbors who actually spoke directly to the woman. And so they're the ones who mentioned that she thought that she was down there for 2 years. They also mentioned that she very adamantly said that 2 of her friends had been murdered by Timothy Haslett Jr. as well. And they also said some additional information, but I would just recommend people go and listen to it directly from what those neighbors had to say.
Gotcha. So she relayed that information to neighbors who related to media. My question is regarding that woman: is she being treated, and is it from family members or the organizations? Who is providing her assistance? Do you know that?
Yeah, no one really had. Right, we don't even know her name at this point, because in the court documents, right now all we have access to is the prosecutor's. The Clay County prosecutor's probable cause statement, and they gave her an alias of TJ. And so we actually don't know who this woman actually is. All we know that she is a black 22-year-old woman. And they said that the Clay County prosecutor's office said that she did get out of the hospital, and that she is being cared for, and that she has been put in contact with a number of agencies. But we don't know very much information because, of course, she wants to keep her privacy at this point in time. So,
are you and other black media outlets in Kansas City, are y'all establishing a listing or a database of missing African Americans in that city to be able to help folks? And are folks actually responding with information?
So we have already started to accumulate our own database. It's something that we, from the very beginning of this case, even when we were being, admonished, and even when we were being, called out by all types of news outlets truly across the country, we remain steadfast with our community, because even when all of that was happening, when our community wasn't being believed, when our news outlet wasn't being believed, we believed that we were taking the right course of action. And so we began working with community members to start to accumulate a database. And so we are working on that. And we're also getting in touch with other community organizations specifically for Black women. One of them is called the Real Justice Network, which has been doing this type of work for a very long time in our city. And so we are, in the earlier stages still, but this is something that we think is incredibly needed, because the police department is clearly not capable of adequately handling these issues. This is a much larger issue than just this one specific instance. Them not believing Black women and the police department not taking seriously the concerns of people in our community is something that has been the case since our police department was created, 200 years ago. And of course, our police department is also currently under federal investigation for racism and discrimination.
Right.
And so we have no belief and no expectation that the police department in Kansas City will ever properly produce safety for our communities. And so we're in the earlier stages right now of creating that groundwork and foundation so that we can do it for ourselves.
You mentioned the database is being created, but where can the public go to actually see? And what I'm saying is, are there 3, 4, 5, 10 names? Folks have come forward, the people who are missing, who are African American and missing. And also, have you all also talked to the Black and Missing Foundation? We've actually worked with them, I mean, goodness, going back 10 plus years as well, because this is the work that they do nationally. So if somebody who's watching or listening, they want to be able to can they go to your site or somewhere else and actually see names, photos, images, things along those lines of folks who are reported missing?
Right now, the database that we have, just because we're in the earlier stages, it's just like a spreadsheet that we have privately. But if people do want to see like images, and right now the only place that is centralized is by the Missouri State Highway Patrol. They have a missing persons, thing on database online that has how old the person is, the race of the person's gender, when they went missing. So if people do want to report it or look up missing persons in Missouri, that's available at the Missouri State Highway Patrol. And also for the Black and Missing Foundation. Go ahead.
And of the database you're talking about, how many of them are from Kansas City?
The one in the Missouri State Highway Patrol, I would have to double check. I haven't seen in Kansas City specifically how many people are missing.
Okay. And you about to make a point about the Black and Missing Foundation. Go ahead.
I was just saying that they just, because of this whole situation, they have reached out to us, and we are definitely that's definitely a relationship that we are hoping to continue, because it's just been made so clear from this situation that we cannot depend on the police by any means at all to create safety for the people in our community, to take our concerns seriously. And we know for a fact now, because of this situation, which is just one of many, and we're going to, I think that this specific situation is uplifting the conversation in a way that it should have been a long time ago, around Black missing women, around Black women who are being killed, and no one is speaking up about it. I think that this is a conversation we should have had a very long time ago. And it's just very, very sad, truly, that it took this horrific tragedy of this woman being abused, sexually assaulted, trapped and tortured in a basement, and the police calling us liars, and the police calling the community liars for, reporting these things. And really the reason that they said that they called us liars and that they said that we were spreading misinformation was because there wasn't a missing persons report. And so I actually reached out to the police department and I said, do you still stand by your statements of saying what we reported on was completely unfounded? And I said, I can understand if you said we don't have any evidence to support these claims, because if you don't have any evidence, then that's just what it is. But clearly now what we reported on was not completely unfounded. And all they had to do to handle the situation better would be to say, something like, we don't have any evidence, but we're willing to look into it, or we don't have any evidence, but, where did you all get these reports from? Anything, truly anything that they could have said other than they're completely unfounded. And so that to us is what's most problematic and harmful about the situation. And that's why we are going to be making sure this is a long-term effort to ensure that we can secure and create safety for ourselves and our communities.
Ryan Sorrell, founder and editor of Kansas City Defender. We appreciate it. Thanks a lot. And then keep us updated on what happens next.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Thanks a bunch. Renita, I want to start with you. The point there about being able to establish on database, I mean, at the end of the day, that's one of the reasons why we do the Blacks and Missing every day, because frankly, when you look at mainstream media, if you're a missing white woman, it'll get reported like crazy. But if you Black and missing, it takes protests, loud yelling and screaming, and typically that's 6-8 weeks later after the fact. We know the most important time is the first 72 hours.
Right. I wish I would have had a chance to ask Ryan a question because he's right about what he's saying. I just wonder, how did they get the information that folks are missing? Because if the police department is saying that they had no formal missing persons report, okay, well, I assume that the Kansas City Defender has some journalistic standards where they don't just print what they hear from one person. They had to have multiple sources confirming that Black women were missing in order for them to report that. So if they had enough information, credible information that they felt they could report on this, why did the police not take that and say, okay, we don't have a missing persons report, which is not unusual because we know a lot of times predators will select people who they believe do not have family or friends who can come look for them. So what this looks like is sometimes predators, kidnapping sex workers, predators kidnapping people who are having drug addiction issues. So that is not something that should have stopped the police from looking into this. So I just wonder how did the Kansas City Defender find out that people were missing? And of course, the police need to answer, and they need to have a better answer than, well, there was no formal missing persons report. They need to answer why they didn't put any effort or any energy into following up on this information.
There was actually a pastor, community activist, who actually did a online video, and they actually reported that particular video. That's what happened there. Makongo, Ryan is correct. The Kansas City, Missouri Police Department is under investigation by the Department of Justice. Look, here's the question. If you're the state, you might want to send in state officials to investigate what's happening here. So they initially just blew them off, said there were no serial killers.
Not only did they blow them off, they did it in such an ignorant fashion. I'm reading right here from one of their comments that they wrote. They said, "We do still maintain that there's no indication that what you guys reported was accurate, and there was no indication there was anything that supported that claim." So, Ryan is talking about not hearing from them, but then when you do hear from them, you get that callousness, and it speaks to the tension that so many of us feel across the country in our communities. And going off of Representative Renita's point, we see this all across the country, Roland. This is kind of what we were talking about last week with the Jeffrey Dahmer documentary and how that underplayed the role race played in what he was doing. We talked about it with the man in California who was targeting young black teenagers as well. And so this is an ongoing problem. And so really at the end of the day, we have to stay vigilant. We know that there's going to be more pushback as this story becomes more public about, these stories being made up and falsified. And so I think the questions that you were asking were really poignant as it relates to making sure that all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed, because these are members of our community who have been marginalized and thrown away. And you would think with the types of cases that this department is dealing with, they absolutely should be bringing in the state, because what they have right now is a serious credibility problem. And you would think that as a story like this becomes known nationally, you would want to do everything possible, especially when dealing with these lawsuits, to have some type of credibility in some way, shape, or form, because right now they have none.
Julian.
I shudder when I think about what happened to this young woman, the reporting about her being detained, whipped, probably overhearing the killings of her friends and her colleagues. But beyond that, I shudder at the kind of anti-Blackness that allows the police officers or the police department to simply dismiss credible possibilities. They didn't have any proof, but they had possibilities. They had buzz in the community about things happening, people disappearing, and they chose not to look into it. It is anti-Blackness at its very worst, and it is why, as Obakongo says, Black people do not trust police officers. But even beyond that, Roland, there's a kernel of joy in this, if you will. This young brother that you interviewed who broke the story, he started a digital startup. The Kansas City Defender is a digital form of media. You are the pioneer in looking at digital media and the way that people break stories that the mainstream media does not break. So I want to know what the mainstream papers in Kansas City have done about this, and what are they doing about it now? Because now we know that this man has basically tortured at least one person, according to the young lady, perhaps three others, her friends who didn't make it. So where's the investigation of this rancid, corrupt ignorant. Police department, where is the investigation of them? That ought to be the next step, and it ought not just be a Missouri story. It ought to be a FBI investigation. How do you simply ignore the torture of Black women? How do you simply ignore that?
All right, folks, back to that Roland Martin Unfiltered video in just one moment.
We are in sunny South Dallas. The election is coming up. It's super important that folks know who they are voting for, but more importantly, what they are voting for. Y'all, we got the free shirts and free lunch right over here.
Freedom is our birthright. No matter what we're up against, we're sending a message in Dallas and Texas and in this country. We won't black down. That's what this bus tour is all about.
The housing cost is one of the most capitalized areas that we have found. People who are marginalized, that are brown and Black, we are suffering the most, and I think that we have the biggest vote and the biggest impact in this election.
I'm voting for affordable housing, for sure.
We should not be paying the cost of a utility failure because our elected officials are too proud to say, we need help.
I know that we can bring out our people to vote. It's a part of our birthright. Right. It's a part of our heritage, and surely it's a part of our present and part of our future.
That's right. That's what's up. And we won't black down. Forward that message to 5 friends, because in that message, it's got links to how to get registered, how to check your registration status.
Like I said, 2:30 we'll start rendezvousing right here on this street. I am voting to let our voice be heard in the rural communities that, hey, we are people too. There are things that we need.
Free shirts, free food, and lots of power.
We are in Longview, Texas, where Black voters matter, 365.
Whatever type of oppression a white supremacist throws our way, we will not black down. We are in relentless pursuit of liberation of our people.
Freedom is liberation for Black bodies and Black communities to make economic change through political power.
Freedom is choice.
We won't black down.
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 Folks, Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punches! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland. Stay Black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?